Hello everybody. In this video we're going to continue working on API. So far what we have an application running, Node.js. It's a server backend. We just have one endpoint, root one, asking us or telling us the message. And we have the logger, pretty much logging every route that we access. And we have a custom logging system. And what we did for this custom logging system in the last video, we just installed Pino and Pino Pretty. Those are really good. For production ready applications, those are actually really nice. But in this case, for development, I was looking at another one called Consola. Yeah, it does the job, and it has that little icons at the beginning that will help us identify and see everything a little bit better. And I believe for this case or development purposes or mini application, this is more than enough. Actually, it has different processes in there, but we don't need to see all of those. We actually only needed is we just need to import the console, well, install it of course, import it, and start using it. And we have the success, we have the info, we have the error, and I don't know what all the other ones actually, but I believe those are going to be the three ones that we can actually use. Let me see if we can see like a new levels in there somewhere. Yeah, probably later, but yeah, with those three it should be more than enough that what we can actually use. So let's remove Pino and Pino Pretty. I will show you how to remove a dependency with that, and let's install Consola. So back in the project, we do npm uninstall Pino, and it's actually Pino and Pino Pretty. When you're doing that, Visual Studio Code should be smart enough to determine that, yeah, I cannot resolve the path for Pino because it's not there anymore, it's already uninstalled, right? And the application should error out because of that. That's fine. Let's actually close the server. It doesn't need to be up for this. So in this case, we're going just to install Consola. And after we install it, we just do import Consola from Consola. And we can actually do const logger equal Consola. And let's export the logger. That way the rest that we have, it should be enough. Let's save it. And let's see where we use it. Errors. We have this logger error right here. So we should be let's do a simple new error, and as a content for that new error we are going to send just the error message. When we trigger the new error, we will see that in the stack already there, and we can remove the rest. Okay. We send the status and we respond with the error message the way that we need it. It should be enough. Okay, what else do we have the logger use it? Not here, logger info. Yeah, that should be enough inside the root path. Okay, this can stay the way that it is. And we have another one in the index, I believe, right there. Let's change this to success. Right, that means whenever we install it, we initialize it, we have success. Let me see what IntelliSense gave me. We have the book, we have error, fatal, info. Yeah, pretty much the same one. Trace, warn. Oh, we have the warning. Cool. Yeah, we have several that we can use over there. Well, for now, that should be enough. And let's run the server. yeah, application starter, and get that little check mark there, print it, and we make the call here, it should be information, yes, perfect, inside the root, but it's a little more cleaner. We don't have that much information, but we don't need it for now. And we did a get request, perfect. And let's make a call to X, doesn't exist. We're in development, we see all the errors tag. And here we send not found, undefine it, yeah. And we have where the error happened, right? So, yeah, that should be more than enough. I believe this pretty much needs what we need it. Cool. Okay, so let's proceed now. So now that we have that, let's actually change logger to console. Perfect. So now what I want to do is actually creating our routes for the CRUD application. So far, I'm not talking about what we want to do. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep like a notes application. Those notes should have a title and a content, and that's it. We should save when that node was created, and we can say when was the last update for that node. And should be enough for that, right? Later we can add authentication and something that we want to do in a future video, and we can tie it to a specific person, but for now, let's do a simple node application API. And for that, we want to use the ATP verbs of methods of get to get the nodes, post to create a new one, put probably for update, and delete. And that should be more than enough when we need it. So let's close all this. And we will go here. Let's start with the routes. So inside of source directory, and let's actually create a new file. And that file, oh sorry, I was looking at my notes right now. We already have those actually here. So inside the routes, let's create a new file. Let's call this going to be inside the API endpoint. So let's put the API as a folder, and let's create nodes.javascript. Right. So this is what we're going to be doing, and let's create another one inside that API called index.javascript. So index JavaScript will have a simple import, the same way that we did it last time. From Express, we want to import the router, right? Well, I like to use first put the library on the right. So IntelliSense will detect which element we have here. Why? Because we have the npm IntelliSense one. So if I start typing router, I can see that we can actually see it right here. Cool. And then we can see router equal router, right? And we can use router dot get, and let's put this as an API. And it's going to be the router we're going to use. And it's a simple request response, right? Of course, it needs to be closer right here, and it needs to be deleted here. Yeah, matter, and we do just simple response.json, and let's call this a simple message API endpoint. Of course, this because it's a JSON, it should be actually curly brackets, and we can remove one of those parentheses. There you go. Let's do export default router, right? and we are from the API. So now we can actually go to index, are in the index of the routes. At that index of the routes, what we'll have is as simple as, let me verify this. Import API from API. Now we can use a simple router use API. Cool. So now we have an API endpoint. That means if we call here API, API endpoint is right there. And we can see it right here. Perfect. So everything works as supposed to. So let's get back to what we did. So we created inside the road, we created a folder called API. Because all the repair is going to be pretty much inside here. We keep this as root because everything that is our server / is directly is going to be right here. But everything is going to be API is going to be inside here. So for now we just keep in nodes. But later we'll add, I don't know, users or any other endpoints or resources that we want to expose. It should be like in this particular folder. Now this is a very opinionated way to do things, is how I like it. So, but by any means, if you find another way to actually put it, go ahead. At the end doesn't matter. Well, it matters to have some kind of control, right? Or some kind of way to saving things. But the way that I like to do things, I like to put those this way. So with these nodes, we specify the nodes route here and the get, delete, everything, the post. And the index is the one that we just import all of them and it's going to be exposed. Now, we specify the API endpoint right here, right? Another way to use it, probably it is going to be a little more complex. Well, you know, if we get the root, we want to specify that. So now we make our application doesn't complain, but when we are actually using on the routes index, we have two routes in there because this one is using the same route as this one, the same path. So one way we can use is we can actually, I believe, there we go. We can set the query string, so we can actually use in the API endpoint API. So just with that, we are specifying that everything route that came from API is going to pre-append the API in there. That means we make this call. Is it still work? This is go to the node API server and the API to the API endpoint. Perfect. So with this, we are pre-appending everything that came from API with just API in there. It's a safer way to do it. This is exactly the same to do everything that came from root, send it as root. So this and this are equivalent in this case, right? So we can keep it like this and everything is still working. Perfect. So now that we have the API endpoint working, let's actually start working with the nodes API. And that's it's going to be a little bit like this. So let's just import the same from Express. For the router, we just do const router equal router as a function. We need to remember that. And the end we do export default router. We will add the endpoint in the middle for a minute. For now, let me just do here, and let me just import nodes from nodes, and to this endpoint we'll use router use in the nodes endpoint to use those nodes. Perfect. So let's create a simple get in my nodes right here. So let's do router get here. Let's do request response, and we want to response JSON. Nodes endpoint. This is just temporary to see it. Yeah, our server is running. We call the API. It's API endpoint. We call API nodes. The get request. We got the nodes endpoint. Perfect. So the way we are doing, we are using nested. So this router is using a nested element. So that way you can keep the separation by different routes and have a better organized code. Let's say it like that, right? So now that we have that, it's going to be pretty much get all the nodes. We're going to create a router.post. Of course, we're in a nodes point. And actually, let's put this, but it's going to be a post now. And create a node. We change this to post. Create a node. It will change to a get a node. Perfect. So endpoint is working. Router.put. Actually, let's put the same one and let's put the same one. So we have the put. It's going to update the node. Well, actually not like that. This should be a delete. Delete the node. But we need to add another one over here. We have the get the node endpoint. Now we need to have how to get a specific one. So something that we can use and is similar as the other one. We can actually specify variables with the semicolon there for an ID, and we can do the invert bracket. I don't know who called that call. Let's put getting node, and we send the ID through here. Actually, const ID equal our request dot query params dot ID. So it's just, let's get the ID from there, and then we just send the ID. It's pretty much. So that way, with the nodes endpoint as a get, we get it all of them. Of course, it's not implemented right now. Just put the routes there, but we get the nodes one for one. Get it node one. Upon the 100, get it node 100. That's pretty much what we're doing, like putting the specific endpoint for those. So that means that for post, it should be fine like this. So let me actually put this on the top. And to put, we need to specify, or we need to update a specific node. So let's do something like this. And let's put this one right here and updating node ID. And for the delete, it's going to be pretty much the same. We need to specify like which one we want to delete. And we're going to send deleting node ID. Oh, of course, we need to get the ID from the parameters. There you go. So all those are going to be the inputs that we want. So we're saying that to get in all the nodes, to create a new node, we changed it to put 7, updating node 7, we change to delete, deleted node 7, and as a getting node 7. Perfect. All our endpoints are working the way they're supposed to. So now let's create the database. So before we actually do a database connection, let's fake it. Those videos are getting actually really long, and it's getting a bigger series than I imagine. So for this quick, I will say like that, we will just fake the database, and this week we're going to create a new real database. I want to do some validations. I don't know if we're going to add it today or not, but something that need to be added. We need to add authentication, and we need to add a client, right? We need to create an application to consume this API. So yeah, we have several videos ahead about this. So let's keep it quicker, and let's keep it easier. So now that we have the endpoints, we can have it added those endpoints. Let's commit it. Perfect. And inside my helpers, I'll use my database, and let's create const nodes equal an array. And this is going to be my fake database for now. It's just a simple array. It's going to be saved on memory, and we're going to push and adding things to here. That's it. And then for this one, we use later we will use something like possible. I'm actually looking at this one. It's a query builder for Node.js that works with any database. Something that we can explain later, but for now, let's keep things simpler, right? So we're going to save all the nodes in there. So the node objects that I want to use is, let's have it like this. I will delete it. I want to have an ID, probably, and this ID will start with 1. I want to have a title, right? I want to have a content, the content of the node. It should have more characters than the title, right? And then we can have the created add. Well, this one actually let's keep it later. Well, for now, with those should be more than enough. So let's have that one, and let's actually just at the beginning, just to have one node in there. Let's do node.push node. Cool. So now my node object have one node in there, and this is just faking it to have whenever we restore the server, because this is not real database, we always have one node in there. So let me create a new endpoint. This new function, need to get all, right? And it's going to be a function that the only thing that it's going to do is return my nodes, and then export this. So this what we're going to do is it's a simple get out function that will return all my nodes in there. Let's actually create another one. Export const get by ID, and an ID need to be sent, and we need to return node dot find, and let's do node.id equal id. Okay, let's change it to n. Remove the same, right? So this is a simple find function for an array. So we are looping through that array, and we're saying for every element of that array, return the only that have the ID of the same ID that we're sending this function. So we just getting that ID there. Now let's create export const create or add, and we're going to send a node, and that node need to be pushed. Let's do nodes in plural push, and we're going to push an element called an ID, and we need to generate a random number here. We will call this letter, and then the rest of the elements of n. Of course, n need to have a title and need to have a content element. So we can have something like this. Let's handle the ID. Let's do a simple npm UUID. Let's create short UUID. I believe it's called short ID. Deprecator. Oh, similar to nano ID. It's another one. Didn't secure URL friendly Unix string ID generated. Let's give me something like this. Maybe. Yeah. So this will generate random IDs. It's pretty much what I need, right? So let's have something like this. Let's change this one to be a random ID. We just put it there, right? And let's do npm install. Oops. Nano ID. I believe I used it before. So we have that one there. And then when to use this is just call it nano ID directly. Cool, so we just need to import it. Import nano ID from nano ID. And whenever we create a new one, it's called nano ID function here to generate a random ID. Cool. So we have it again all, it's just returning the nodes. At the beginning, we just adding a one node to be there, right? And we put a random ID as the ID actually for that node. So we have the nano ID, we have the get by ID, we have the add. Let's do export const update, and we're going to be sending one node. Let's call it n, right? So what we need to find here is, this is going to be a little more tricky. What we can do, let's fake it a little bit. Actually, we're going to add the node, yes. Oops. And we are going to return, actually, let's go here, const new ID equal nano ID. Sorry, we want to get this in a minute. So what I want to do when I add it, I will generate the ID first. Then I will just push it with that new ID. Not sure, just call it ID. That way we can get rid of this. So we are going to save the ID and the rest of the node's content. And then we are going to return get by ID with that ID that we already created. Perfect. And this one is going to return this particular one from here. Okay. So let's do the update. We need to do something similar. So first we need to do cons db node, let's call it. Now the node from the database is going to be equal get by ID actually for update we need to send in let's actually have two elements here. Let's actually send the ID directly and the nodes just for calendar way. So we're going to call the node by ID, it's going to be this one. And then now that we have it, we need to remove it somehow. So probably going to be better. Okay, what we can do here, let me check. What we can do here? Well, let's get back to this in a minute. Let's start testing those that we already have here. So we have a helper of the database. And that database is using the nodes from here, right? And then we have different elements for that particular nodes. So what I want to use in my nodes endpoint, after I import the router, we will import everything as db, actually as nodes from my helpers. There you go, helpers database. So this one, whenever we want to respond JSON, and we're going to send nodes dot get all. Cool. When we post it, oh, let's actually see that. So we do a call to get, we should get in all the nodes. Something failed here. Okay, let's try again. So we have a node getting from here. Perfect. Let's get the one for ID. So now that we have the ID, we should respond with node.getBarID, and we're sending that particular ID from the router. So that means we send here random ID, we're going to get that particular one. Pretty cool, right? So we have the plural one working, get it in as an array, and when we have a specific ID like this one, let's put it right here, we just get in that particular ID. So now let me put something like not existing ID. If not body return it, you give me 200, and probably we need to handle this a little bit better. So let's see. So cons node equal this one, right? And then we can say if nodes doesn't exist, we're going to do a couple of stuff. If it does exist, we just respond no JSON, or we can use a send. Let's do send, and we send that particular node. If it doesn't exist, we just do respond dot status 44 dot send. Let's do send an empty object. Didn't like it. What we can do to verify this? Okay, let's change this a little bit. So let's do if not exists, we're going to send it. Else, we're going to respond with that 404. Pretty much. That way, this one will give me a 404 error. Right, we have that. And if we do a random ID, it's working perfectly fine. But random ID X that doesn't exist, it gives me a 404 and it gives me an empty object. So what we can do here, just to log something, let's actually import the logger. Import logger from these two levels back, helpers, logger. There you go. And here we can use a simple logger.warn. We can send error getting node. We'll actually do simplify this. Node ID doesn't exist. Cool. Just to have something in the logger. That way we call it. You have as a warning. And we have the 404 negative, but we can see a little bit better. We have the warning right there. Cool. So we have 3 endpoints created. Well, 2 of them. Now let's use the post. And the post is going to be a little bit different. Because for the post, we actually need to save the information as a body. So we can do const new, and then the post is going to be equal let's actually get the post from request.body and let's call this new post, right? Because the post is going to be after we just really save it. So we're going to get the post from the body and we get it as a new post. So if we do if new post, we do something. If not, we do something else, right? So let's remove this. Let's change this JSON to send. Probably going to be a little more better to understand. Sorry. So here, if new post exists, we're going to do const post equal. Actually, not post. Sorry. Node. That is called new nodes. And it's going to be if new nodes. Perfect. So we're going to do is for my nodes dot add the new node. And I have a typo here because this should be singular. I'm going to save that to my database. It's actually just pushing into my array, and we just to do a response dot send my node, because this will return, and we have it right here, the get by ID. Okay. If not, spot the status, and we can do 404 doesn't exist. Batch request. There's one called batch request. Status. Let me see if I can find that. No. Let me see. What I want to do is a better way to remember those status. No. No. Okay. No, this is not what I need. What I need to do is HTTP bat request is 400. Okay, let's do 400. Let's simplify it. So it doesn't work. So the start is going to be a 400, and we're going to send let's keep it simple, bat status. Cool. Okay. That means if I do a post request, it should give me an error, right? Then I will know from undefined. Oh, I forgot something about this. Sorry. So express body. We need to add something extra in order to be able to see the body parser. Before was actually body parser, but it's not needed anymore. We will get HTTP post body. I was forgetting to add that particular body parser. But I believe it doesn't need it anymore as a body parser itself. It just called. Let's look for the Express.js IP reference version 4. Application. I believe it's actually JSON. No, it's not. This application use something. Let me check. This for the static paths, something that we'll use probably later. But for now, I want to use request body. There you go. So the way to get the request body, we need to use parsing application, and we used to do this for the XS form URL encoded. So the only thing that we need to add is actually these two lines, and these two lines will add extra functionality to the app that is turned off by default, and will allow us to use application JSON and other things. So for that, we're going to go to the main index, here. Let's actually, before we use anything, let's put those right there. Let's remove these comments, right? With that, we allowed us to use the body of the express word. Now, if we call the post API, we have added status. That means that the body is available and the body is actually empty, as you can see right here. Okay, so let's actually send a JSON file, and let's call, and this needs to be in double quotes always. So we need to set the title, and let's call this new node from API, and the content right? We will call it, didn't like it either, title content. Why didn't like it? Oh yeah, sorry, didn't like it because I actually, here I specify in my nodes endpoint that is looking for the node in the post request, right? So this should be inside a node, and then we open this, and these two lines should be inside the node, right? Something like that, and these two should be like this. Okay, and we need to, when we post it, we need to set the content of the new node. So we just need to send this right like this, right? That way we'll remove that parent object. So if we do that again, invalid attempt to spread non-literal distance. We should have, okay, in their work. Let's actually send it like this, probably it's going to work. Then send it. Nano ID default is not a function. Now we have an issue with nano ID. That means that we have an issue right here. What happened with nano ID? Nano ID. We just import nano. Oh, there you go. Nano ID should be inside those brackets. Let's try it again. Okay, my new nodes got added. As you can see, this is in random ID. So let me change this to a get request, and then remove my body. We don't need it, and call it. Now we have two different IDs. Nodes in there. If I call this, you just get the first one. Cool. And if I call this, I just get the second one. So our API is getting somehow getting shape. Now let me show you something different here. Let me restart the server. And I know that I already mentioned this, but let me just get all the nodes again, and you will see that the second one is not there. And it's not there because we are not persisting the data anywhere. So whenever we restart the server, we lose everything that we already saved there. That's why I added this particular node, the first one, as a base one, right? Just to always have something there, but that's pretty much what it is. So cool. So the add one is actually working the way they're supposed to. So let's So it's going to be easier if we delete one. So let's do export cons delete, and we're going to send the ID. And probably it's going to be simple. Cons and actually the nodes is going to be equal. Let's rewrite the database, and just for this case, nodes dot filter, and we're going to send an element where the NID is not equal. Oh, for me, get this little tip there. For you, you need to put like the admiration and then a equal right away, and you put that equal double. But in my case, it's doing this more kind of, but this is actually what I'm typing without spaces. So what I need to do, my node ID is not equal the ID that I'm sending. So, delete is not allowed. Delete bad ID. Let's call it like that, or remove. Let's call it remove, probably going to be better. Count remove equal that. Node is a constant. Interesting. So let's change it to LED. And now we can actually change it. So here what we're doing, we'll filter the IDs, right? The nodes, and we are removing. Now give me everything except the one that I ask you to remove. And then I assign all the array to the nodes array. That way we are pretty much like deleting that particular one. It's pretty much what I'm doing. And we can just return nodes. So let's go to the index and let's go to the delete endpoint. Nodes equal. Actually, it cannot be that. What we can do. I believe this one we can actually do it right here. Let's return just the nodes dot deleting that particular ID. And let's send that instead of JSON. So this is just handling my array, right? It's the way that we'll do. After we actually do a database connection, we just need to delete and do the SQL statement for deletion and things like that. But for now, let's keep it like this. So we have this one is working. So let's post a couple of those, and let's call this node. Let's actually, we have this one from here. Let's actually put this one right there, just because I'm being lazy here. Right, with a ID. Get worse. Okay. Okay. So not title 2. Let me create it. Perfect. Let me create the 3 one. And let me create a 4 one. Cool. Now let's get rid of this. And let me go to my get request. And I have all those nodes from there. Perfect. If I query one particular one, I get that one there. Perfect. Now if I do a delete element here, nodes delete is now a function. Oh, yeah. It's actually nodes remove, not delete, remove. Perfect. Let me post. This should be a note. I probably need to be saving this somewhere in order to have it. Title. Let's call this one. Content. Content. Yeah, let's send it. Okay. Let's do second. Let's do third. And let's do fourth. Just to have a bunch of them there. Cool, if I do a get request, I can send them and I get everything. Remember, it doesn't matter here. I didn't delete it just because I want to save these objects here in the Insomnia app. But when you do a get request, remember, the body is not reading, so the JSON of body doesn't matter in this case. So I have a bunch of them. So let me just get that particular one. You're getting the number, not number 2. Perfect. So that means we get a delete with that particular one. We just got 1, 3, 4, or 5. We remove the second one. Perfect. So it's working where it's supposed to. Now if I do a get to all of them, that one is still not there. Now what about if I do a delete with something that doesn't exist? It doesn't matter. It's not going to delete anything from there. We can have some kind of error validation, but for now it's good enough, right? Let's keep it like this. Perfect. So the delete endpoint is working, right? With the remove function from my nodes in the database. And it's doing what it's supposed to. So now, what other thing we can do? Yeah, we need to put the put for the update a specific node. And that should be enough. So for that one, let's actually do export cons update. Can I use update? Probably. And I will send an ID. Yeah, let's send the ID and the nodes objects. I know the nodes objects have all the ID there, but that's okay. And let's do a bunch of this. So let's do cons db node equal get par ID with that particular ID, right? If that one exists, we need to update it. If db node exists, we need to do something about it. If not, let's just return null object, right? So if that exists, we just do cons and let's actually need this one to be a let, right? So db node will have ID, we have the title and the content right here. So let's actually do db node is going to be equal actually it should be like this. db node is going to be equal all the elements for db node and all the elements for the nodes that I'm sending right here. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. So what I'm doing here, if I got a copy of that database, the database, the original is still there. And then again, the whole elements just overwrite the ones that came for this one. Yeah. Then what I need to do is let's, because it's actually an array, let's just remove it. Let's do nodes dot remove that one from that particular ID, nodes dot, actually let's not remove it directly, let's actually do add, right? Let's use the function complete. So let's remove, and we need to send the ID, remove that particular ID, and then we just need pretty much to add that DB node. And this is the one that we're going to return. No, actually we're going to return all the nodes. No, actually going to return just this one. Let's save it. And what happened here? Why this didn't like it? Ooh, no, let's return. Okay, so we can actually do something like this. Return null. Return. There you go. So here is, if this exists, it's going to do it and we're going to return that node. If none doesn't exist, you're going to skip it and we're going to do return null. Pretty much, this is what we're actually doing here when we never update something. So in theory, if I do get for that one doesn't exist, yeah, let me get all of them. So let me create, I get my node, I'll post, let me post node 1, let me post my node 2, cool, let me get all of them, and let me change this content from here. So what I will do a put request with that ID, and what I need to do here, and let me check how I call it. I have that ID. So we can keep this one like this, and this is the new content updated. And let's keep the same title, right? So if we send it, so we just need to remember with that ID, boom, updated that. Oh, of course, we need to call it. Oh my god, we didn't put it in the route. So let's change this to content. Let's go to the route here, const not, and let's change this to updated node from my request.body, and let's do something similar like this. Where is it? Oh, I did something extra here. Yeah, probably it was too much. Let me send the node. I don't need to send this. I don't need to make this validation. Sorry, let me check what I can do here. Let's keep it like this for now. So then I know it's going to be for my request body, and I will respond with my, we can do something similar like this. or no, let's not handle it. Let's actually just put something really quick. Node.update. I need to send an ID, and I need to send a note. It's going to be the updated note. Boom. That should be it. Okay. So let's do a post request. Again, to create the node 1, another to create the node 2. Let's do a get to get all of them. Perfect. Let's change the content of node 1. And let's do put with that particular ID. And let's call new title. Let's call this new content. Let's call it. Perfect. New title, new content. And we get all of them. Remember, it finished with MSL. Right? There you go. With the same ID, MSL, we have the new title and new content right there. Of course, because we actually put it right here, we just push it at the end. We're supposed to be like inserted where it's supposed to be, right? But when we do a database, we're going to order this by updating or created date, and it should be enough. So with this, we have a simple, very simple API with all the objects. And it's doing get, post, get by ID, put it and delete it. Okay. And I've been recording it for how long? Also over an hour. Okay. What we can do, that it should be simply enough. Let's add some validation before we proceed. Or we can stop it right now. Yeah, let's add the validation just because we can. So remember Joy, we used it before. Let's should npm install Joy. Joy will be schema description language data validation for JavaScript. So we're going to create a Joy object and we're going to pretty much say what it needs to be in there. Okay? But we will validate if the information is the way that it's supposed to. Okay? So we go to the database after we install it. And let me verify what I have here on my notes. So we need to import Joy from Joy, and we create const nodes schema. It's going to be a new Joy object. This Joy object will have several elements. We have a title, right? And this title, what they call it here? It's a Joy string, and we can attach a lot of stuff. Yes. So this title should be just a Joy string. Let's actually just let this to be optional. And then we do the other things that we need to have is the content. And we do a Joy string. Actually, no, let's put they are required, right? We always need to send don't want to be there. Now, for validation purposes, we can have this to be, I don't know, something min, max, right? Let's do the title should be minimum of 4. Actually the minimum 3. And should be max, I don't know, 20. Something like that. And the content, it should be minimum of 5. And let's do a max of 30, right? Something like that. It's so just to add some constraints that we were doing. So with that joy and that node schema, and we can have several elements, and you can go through the documentation to see all of them that can be here. So let's actually go to the strings, right? And you can have the host names, IPs, email, max, minimum, replace, tokens, stuff like that, right? So the way to use it is, like for example, when we add it, when we need to add a node, we need to verify that this node is valid. So the way to do it is how we can actually use it. Let me check how I did it. So the way to use it, we will get an error and a value from our node schema validate. So we're going to validate something, and we're going to validate the content of n, right? That's pretty much what we're doing here. And after we validate that error, we can actually use a couple of things. So we can do if error, right? If error came with something, well, we can use a simple new error. I don't know, probably something like this. Not valid. Actually, no. What we can do here is we're returning get a bad ID. Let's return the error. If an error, we return the error. If not, we are going to I'm trying to think what to do there. So if we have an error there, we return the error now. If not, we just do the rest. Yeah, it should be enough. So we don't need the value here. Let's see what happens. So let's get all the nodes. Right, we have one. And let's create a new one. And let's try to remove the title. And let's try to do a post. Let's see if that actually works. Invalid attempt to split not in an instance in order to be must have a symbol iterator. Where happened this error? It happened in error handler. It should be this one. And let me check. Okay. We have an error. And the error is telling us that title is required. Label to Supremo, what we can do is return something different here. So instead of returning the error, let's actually return error object, right? And let's return error and inside details and in the message we send details message probably. And what happens when I don't send the content? Title is required. We have the path and the required context label, key label. So this actually gives the first error. So we can use message should be error dot details dot details 0 actually, because the first element is an array, and we send the message. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, title is required. Okay, probably we can get rid of this. Let's use something like that. So error title is required. Perfect. But now we cannot add something if we are not responding the way that it's supposed to, right? So let's actually put the title. Let's see what happens with add title. Title X, right? Title length will be at least 3 characters long. Okay. SYC. Content is required. Content. A. Content length will at least 5 characters long. So let's do a bunch of A. And let's actually do a little bit A content there. Content length will be less or equal to 30 characters. Perfect. Content. Oops. Content. I need to learn to type. There you go. And we save it. Cool. We have a error validation right there. And probably was a little fast. I didn't explain a little much. But the way that Joy works, we create a schema, right? And that schema uses a Joy object with the elements that you need to have, which one is going to be required or not. And you put like a bunch of constraints as functions, right? And those functions are piped out like one after the other. And then, in order to get the error for the validate function of that schema. And I will send whenever I have right here. So we'll validate it, and they will specify if it's working the way they're supposed to, right? Now, if we have that error, we just need to return that message, like, hey, we have an issue. So this one from here, the other one that needs to have it is the post, like the update. There you go, here. Let's first verify if that if the node is correct, right? Let's save it. And that will do the same for the update section. So let me post the same message here. Perfect, let me get this ID just to remember. Get, let's do a get. Perfect, let's do a get to that ID. Perfect, let's do a put. And let's remove the content and just put new title. This should fail. Content is required, right? So we need to send the content in order to have it working the way it's supposed to. So that's pretty much what we're doing here. So we had that schema validation and it was actually fast. It just took us, well, like 20 minutes, but yeah. So I want to add one more thing. You see that we respond with a 200? Yeah, whenever we have the error message, I want to respond with a 400 there. So here we have the logger. We don't have the logger. Something that we can use is import logger from our helpers logger. We need to know that we have an issue there, right? We need to save it somewhere. So that means I didn't make it. Oh, yeah, it's the same level. I'm already inside helpers, so yeah, it should be right there. So that means whenever we have an error, logger.error, let's put that, and let's send my full error object to there. And let's do the same right here. So whenever we have an error like this, content is required. Right? The error is being saved the way it's supposed to. Cool. What else? What else we can do? Oh yeah, we need to change this, right? So we go back to our nodes. Sorry, or API nodes, yes. And here, let's see, whenever we do a post, if that response, actually, we can have it like, let's do if not.error object exists, we're going to do a response.status 400 dot send. Oh, if that not error, we just do change the status to 400, and then we send the note whatever it happened there. So let's actually go to post. Let's do it. Yeah, content is required. We have a request. We do content, comma, content, and let's do ABC. It's too short. We have a batch request and we have an error. Perfect. And this should work. And we have a 200 there. So with a simple validation, just to see if our nodes have an error, we just change the status of our response to be 400, like a batch request. And we need to do the same in our put element. And it should be a send. And before we actually send it, yeah, we need to remove this from here. The const response equal that, right? And if response have an error, if not, I just set my response. Pretty much the same, right? So now let's actually create this one. And let's create the same one several times. Perfect. Let's get one of those. Let's do a post. Oops. With an error. Oh, there we go. Not found. Can't find it. Ooh, what happened here? Oh, yeah. There you go. Content is required. 400, but if I do a put, oops, let me do a get first. Let's change random ID. Let me do a put to random ID. Content is required, and 400 is a batch request. So now we have validation, and we have everything that we needed to be there. So cool. Let me just save it, add it, fake DB, and validation. And that should be enough, I believe. I will stop it right here. And this will be enough for this week, I believe. So for next week, what I want to do is, now we want to use a real database. We will create a client to do that, and later we can add valid authentication. Yeah, let's handle the API to be like that. So for this moment, let's wrap it up. So what we did, we create a fake database as an array, and in that array we are saving the information locally in memory. We create getJoy as a object validation method, and we nano ID to generate random IDs, pretty much. And we just put it like simple array functionality in order to find, in order to filter, in order to add, or in order to remove. And before we actually add or update, we need to validate that what we are sending, it have the proper values as we expected. And we tidied up everything in our router, and the router handled all that information the way they're supposed to. So that's pretty much everything. If you have any question, any doubt, don't hesitate to reach me. Happy coding, everybody.